come. I know Andrew wasn't able to come today, but we're just so honored to be able to have you here and to celebrate your dad, your husband. We finally get to do this. Patricia and I have been planning this since November 2020, and it was probably one of the hardest things for COVID for me, was not to be able to go to his funeral. And for all of us, it was really in the major lockdown, like nobody was able to go, you didn't want to take somebody else's spot, and anyways, I'm just glad we have this chance now to honor this amazing man. And how apropos that our first real alumni gathering is for Dr. Glashan. It is the first post-pandemic gathering that we've had. And you know, I don't think that we would have the alumni that we have coming back to the school if it wasn't for Pat. It was such a special person who meant so much to all of us, to our school community. Patrick touched us all so deeply. Anyone who knew him has many a story to tell. A beloved co-worker, friend, and mentor to us all, and to everybody who's gathered here today. We have a few people who would like to give tribute to him today, so I will keep this introduction short, which for most of you who know me, that is a very difficult feat. And Patrick would attest to that because he has an office right next to me for years and he can't ever stop me from talking. But anyways, that's why I'm looking at my notes because I'm not going to ramble on about anything. I'm on task. So Patrick had a gift of listening and finding something in common with everyone. For my parents, especially my dad, whose hometown was Sherbrooke, Quebec, and my dad used to come to Remembrance Day celebrations, and you know, he just had a gift with the older, the younger, everybody. And he always had something in common with you. Our kids used to call him the walking Google. And they loved to go down to his office. And yeah, they got blue whales. Everybody liked the blue whales. But it wasn't just the blue whales. They actually loved asking him questions because he just so beautifully answered. He just had so much wisdom, and he was just so kind and humble. And he wasn't one of those know-it-alls. He did know it all, but he didn't, you know, tout his stuff about knowing everything. So, yeah. And Pat never missed an opportunity to come to our alumni events. After he retired, he came back with Pat every year. The Pat and Pat team would come, and honestly, I think that that's the only reason that we have the alumni that we have from all the years of them. They came to see him, and Pat too. But they did. They came to see him, and they. The pictures that we have of him, so my husband too was very touched by Pat, and Brent has taken a lot of pictures over the years, and the pictures of him deep in conversation with students, with families, or laughing his face off. I mean, his deep faith and his sense of humor were amazing. And of course the sports thing, but we have other people here that are going to talk about that. And those ties, his ties. He was famous for his ties. And so Patricia,
they better go.
Patricia graciously,
don't take any home.
She donated those to us, and there's a number of you here. I'm going to ask you to stand up. All of you have a tie on that is Dr. Glashan's tie. And there's something to say in each one of the ties. Andy's tie is one in the back there that we came across that was from his class. So he did, there was only one other time in the history of Clearwater that we had 2 grade 10s, and he was the homeroom teacher to his class. And when he retired, they did a tie, because tie was Dr. Glashan, and happy retirement, and they signed their names. And when I saw that in the box, Patricia was just like, oh, Andy, this is Andy's, he's gonna love it. Anyways, okay. There's a few here, you can have one. Okay, so that's all I'm going to say. So without further ado, I am going to ask Darren Forster is going to be our first one to share some of his memories with us. See, I kept it short.
Patricia, I'm honored to wear the tie. Father created an image of Dr. Glashan wearing a suit, shiny shoes, and his tie. I can picture him in this one. And it was a blue double-breasted suit that he used to wear. And he looked so academic, so regal, so Dr. Glashan. So I am indeed honored to wear the tie. And welcome to your family today, and to all of the students that have grown up. Wow. It just seemed to get older. You guys just grow up very gracefully and nicely. So welcome, everyone. I'm going to try to keep my comments brief because in reality, every one of you could come up today and speak, and you would all have a story to talk and to say that comes from the heart. And I suspect that that will happen after we disperse into the more social gathering stage of this celebration. I know that we have other speakers, and we've been asked 5 minutes. And Mr. McClintock, I'm going to time your speech, because I know you're a...
I've already timed yours, you're at 3. But you love hearing yourself talk. So
Thank you very much. Have a great I'm going to tell you a very brief story. It was the month of March, this past March, when we were allowed to actually have in-person meetings. And the novelty of actually having a meeting with other individuals was fantastic. It was an administrators meeting for private schools. So I attended, and the bonus was that they were actually serving lunch to us, so it was going to be a great day. We went through the agenda, we executed on all elements, and then we came to the informal aspect where we're eating lunch, and I'm talking with an individual to the left of me and conversing, but in front of me, I can also hear a conversation. And I remembered it because it's meaningful. The first thing I heard was he was superintendent in Lethbridge. So I'm trying to concentrate on this conversation, but now this has piqued my interest because I'm thinking. Then I hear the comment, he was able to talk me through my first year teaching, and he helped me. Okay, so I'm again trying to converse, but now my interest is increasing even more. He was patient, the person said. He understood what it was like to really be a teacher. He listened to me. Well, now it was like a mystery novel. I wanted to know who this person was, but in my heart, I wanted to be Dr. Glashan. And sure enough, at the end of the conversation, and by at this point, I'm now ignoring the person to my left. At this moment, he goes, yeah, it was this guy named Dr. Pat Glashan. And I just sat back, and I know it was at the time we were thinking of what we were going to do for this. I just thought, thank you, Dr. Glashan. He cared so much, and that was an example of someone who had nothing to do with our school. Another emotion came over me at that point. I went up to the individual afterwards and I said, I'm not sure you're aware that he passed. He was not aware of that. And I gave him that news. But it was almost funny because I became very possessive of Dr. Glashan. You had him as superintendent, but he was ours. He was our Dr. Glashan. And he was. For everything that he did for our students. for our teachers, our faculty, and for our parents and for our community. He did listen. He did connect. For the record, he's the only guy that's asked, or I've ever been asked in a job interview, do you like Jerry's Pizzas from Lennoxville? And credit to Paul Hudek, you asked questions about the Montreal Canadiens, so that was good as well. Needless to say, Dr. Glashan was our doctor. He was a good man. He was a faithful man. And I think his most enduring quality was that he listened. And he listened to make full connection. So, on behalf of all of our faculty that are here today, thank you for being here. I just want to say, Patricia, and I now label you as the patron saint of substitute teaching. I remember calling you at 6:30 in the morning. That being said, it was a long time to come to this memorial, but I'm glad we're here because it's so important to us to tell you that we loved him as a man in our school. So thank you very much for being here with us today. God bless you, Dr. Glashan.
Thank you, Darren. Next up is Mr. Rickman. If you would like to come up.
First of all, it's so nice to see you, Pat, Elizabeth, David, and pass our best on to him. It is a great honor and privilege to be here today to pay tribute to the late, the great Dr. Patrick Alexander Glashan. You know, as I look back over my years here at the school, there have been times when I wondered whatever made me come to a place like this. Yes and yes. But by the same token, I have a lot of fond memories. I met a lot of nice people. I met people who believed in me, who supported me. And in that group was the marvelous, the wonderful Dr. Glashan, my advocate. Yes, I remember meeting Patrick for the first time when I was a sub. Believe it or not, I was a sub. And go figure. But anyway, it was down in the basement of Besbro about 12 years ago. And, you know, I was sorting through my math, physics stuff and getting ready to cover the classes for that day. It was my first day on the job. And in walks the good doctor. Wow, he was something. He made me feel at home. He said to me, anything you need, you come and see me. My office is right down the hall. Well, I didn't need him that much that year. I did come in for a few more sub times, but I didn't really need him. But I needed him the following year because, you know, the first couple of weeks there, he was a great help. And by the same token, he was totally amazing. Like if you ever want to experience an epiphany, spend some time with the good doctor. Because, you know, like you go into his office, he's such a great storyteller. You know, I was just captivated. I'm not going to lie. I was captivated by this guy. I guess the more he talked, the more I thought it was the Lord speaking. Yes. That's true. But what happened was, after that, when I heard the news, it was devastating. But once the tears subsided and the emotions became more stabilized, I said to myself, I got to do something. This is depressing. I got to do something because, you know, I had to have peace with myself. I had to have, my soul soothed through all this. I had to go through a healing process. So what better way of doing that than putting on an old Johnny Cash tune? He turned the water into wine. Oh, that was the doctor. No question about that. And at that time, I said to myself, this is starting to feel good. And I must have played that song at least 1,000 times. I'm not lying to you. And when I thought about it, in that little Cana town, the word went around that he turned the water into wine. And yes, he walked upon the Sea of Galilee, shouted far and wide. He calmed that raging tide, yes. And he fed the hungry multitude. With a little bit of fish and bread, they said that everyone was fed. Yes, that was the doctor. He fed us all. He nourished us all. He was the type of person that was for encouragement, for respect, for appreciation, for inspiration. That was the doctor. Yes, he just made you feel so important. He was like that with everybody. I remember going to Chicago with him. Oh, that was quite a trip. No doubt about that. The boys, I was with the grade 10 boys, and they were just fabulous. Great time. And so anyway, can you imagine seeing a Bulls basketball game on a Friday night? The Bears football Sunday morning, and we had to scoot across town to get to a Chicago Blackhawks game that night. Well, that's not too bad. And next thing you know, we're off to the hockey game, and towards the Madhouse of Madison, they called it. It was crazy down there. And the boys were getting a little bit hungry. And so was I. And so anyway, we pulled up in front of an Italian restaurant, and I couldn't believe this. When we get in there, it's just jam-packed. I mean, jam-packed. The lineup, it was incredible. But then, leave it up to the good doctor. Calls over the manager, and I'm sitting back there, I don't know what's going on. And he gives a few little words to him, and this is a true story. Next thing you know, they're waving us through because the place is packed. Like they're all looking at us. They're saying, who are these people? Oh, the kids loved it though because, hey, royalty. Hey, we're royalty here, man. And, and it was like, so they took us, this is a true story, they took us to the back room and they put us in a ballroom just for us. Go figure. And there it was beautiful long table, everything was set up. Our servers were there waiting for us. This was heaven, this was all right. And they just, and they knew that time was a premium, so they knew that we had to get moving here, so they just kept bringing the pasta. They just kept bringing it, it was all right. So yes, those were the days. So in closing, this is not a time to say goodbye. But this is a time just to say thank you. But thank you. So this wasn't a time to say goodbye, but just to say thank you. Thank you for the memories. Thank you, Dr. Glashan, for just being you. I almost made it.
We're going to call up Paul D'Angelo next.
Thanks for lowering the mic, John. I appreciate that. Patricia, Dave, and Elizabeth, this is an honor for me. Hello and good afternoon. My name is Paul D'Angelo, and I had the pleasure of serving as the athletic director and outdoor education teacher at Clearwater Academy from 2008 to 2016. I was lucky enough to squeeze in more career-related adventures into an 8-year span than many people get to experience in their lifetime, and I am very grateful for that. There are a lot of familiar faces in the room today that were a huge part of those experiences and part of many special memories for me. It warms my heart to be back with you today to share a tribute to another man who was a very special part of my Clearwater Academy experience. Dr. Glashan began his second stint at CWA in August of 2008, which was the same time that I was hired and began my employment at Clearwater. I was very lucky to have him as a colleague and friend. We worked closely together as members of the school's directive team. He coached basketball in our athletic program. Our offices were side by side for 4 years in the aforementioned basement of Bessborough Hall. First floor, that's right. And perhaps our most memorable experience was chaperoning a trip to Rome together in 2013. And also, we occasionally escaped the school for a dinner out, a sporting event together, or a quick beverage after work. Despite our 30-year difference in age, it's pretty neat to call this man my friend. So I'm going to cut from my script, which I did write out, and say I'd like to share my 4 favorite Dr. Glashan stories in chronological order. Our first one, I see Colin Hudick and Mark Dumbriek with us today, and Neil Fitzgerald. They were on this trip. So in my first month at Clearwater, September 2008, our school bus was brand new, if you can imagine. Not the one out there, I'm talking the old one. Some of you are thinking nothing was ever brand new, but it was brand new back in 2008, and we had done a couple outdoor ed trips, and then we figured out that we didn't have the right permit, or there was something off. We needed a couple more days, and we couldn't use the bus. So I had a hike planned with the grade 9 boys, and Dr. Glashan said, well, I'll join you. Do you think we can get enough cars? So Neil drove, and I drove, and Dr. Glashan drove, and maybe a dad joined us, but we made it work. Now, it was a 14-kilometer hike out in Kananaskis that day, and we were doing a varying terrain, but a nice September day. It was going to be a good hike, and Pat shows up. I was doing the math. He would have been 60 years old at the time. He shows up in his dress shoes, dress pants, and like, okay, well, this works for you. And here he is at age 60, completely kicking our butts, on all the students' butts, on that trip that day. Fit as a fiddle, first one up the big hills, and I think the kids were pretty impressed with him that day. Hopefully, Colin and Mark, you probably remember that one. So I gained a fair bit of respect for Dr. Glashan that day, because even in his dress clothes, he could still absolutely kill a hike, and he was certainly keen to help out. Fast forward a couple of years, it was after work one day, there was no sports, and there was a clip making its rounds on social media from Jeopardy the night before. And so I pulled it up on YouTube, and it was a pretty cool clip. It was about 15 Jeopardy questions in Double Jeopardy, the second round. And this contestant was in 3rd place, and he goes on a run. He clears 3 categories in a row, gets all 15 questions right, gets 2 daily doubles in there. I don't remember the exact numbers, but he was in 3rd place at like $4,000, and he shot himself all the way to like $58,000. So I said, Pat, did you see Jeopardy last night? He said, nope, I missed it. And I imagine Pat was a pretty regular Jeopardy watcher, right? So I said, well, come see this clip. And I show it to him, and it was a pretty cool epiphany or experience, because as we watched the clip, when Alex Trebek read the answer before the contestants, all 15 questions, guess who had it right? And I know none of you are picking me. So I honestly said to him when he retired, I said, Pat, you gotta try out for Jeopardy, because you are that intelligent and smart. And he probably never did, but man, I imagine watching Jeopardy at home with Pat was a pretty rough experience. He's a pretty bright guy. All right, I'm gonna fast forward a couple more years now. In 2013, one of my favorite experiences at Clearwater was going to Rome. And we gave up our Easter break. I gave up because it's a free trip to Rome. I see a few people who were on that trip as well. So Pat and I were the teacher chaperones for the pilgrimage to Rome. And I did all 3 international trips. I went to Los Angeles once with a group of boys. I went to Mexico once with a group of boys. I see Colin and Mark again were on that one. But certainly the Rome trip stands out. Now I gotta tell you, Clearwater kids, your behavior overall was pretty good. But traveling internationally, you didn't quite understand, well maybe some of you did, but a lot of you didn't quite understand that you don't really mess around in airports. Airports are kind of the place where you need to be on stream and moving things along. So Pat and I were on the flight, we're flying to Frankfurt, and I'm trying to figure out the times on the tickets. We're landing in about 25 minutes, and I think, I'm talking to Pat, I said, Pat, I think our flight to Rome from Frankfurt is boarding right now. He says, yeah, I think we're gonna be in a little bit tight here. So we were all spread out throughout the airplane. I stand up on the flight, and as most of you know, I have a fairly loud voice, but I'm yelling at the whole plane. I say, Clearwater kids, when we get in this airport, you cannot go to the bathroom, you cannot stop for food, you need to follow us. If you can't see me, you've gone too far. Because we have to move, we gotta catch our flight, right? So long story short, we're barreling through the airport, we gotta go through customs, we gotta get our bags, we had to change terminals. And there was actually somebody who met us and said, yes, we want you on this flight because they don't want to reschedule because we had a group of about 24 people. So needless to say, we get to the gate and it's in final boarding. It's already all boarded, they're waiting for us. And we're missing one kid. And we lost 1 kid in this process, that's all we did. So Pat is telling me, you get on the plane. He is literally standing in the whatever you call it, the connection to the airplane, trying to prevent them from going because we're only missing 1 kid. The kid came around the corner about 5 minutes later. That was a pretty cool experience watching Dr. Glashan trying to hold this plane in Frankfurt. So same trip now. Now some of you have heard me tell this story, but certainly we all know Pat also had a really wonderful sense of humor. So same trip, we did a day journey to Pompeii. And I gotta tell you, I'll start off with a compliment here. So, somebody already mentioned that Pat was a great storyteller. One of the best. Because we had, I think there was 18 boys on that trip. Matt and Andy, you were with us on that one. James or Sergio, were you guys on that trip? No? Okay, I get confused sometimes. Okay, so we're at Pompeii, and we're standing in the entranceway. We're about to go in, and Dr. Glashan is giving the history talk to the boys. Now, the best part of this, so he's explaining what happened at Pompeii, when it was discovered, why it's a World Heritage Site, and what we're going to see. But during that 3 or 4 minutes, he totally has these boys' attention. The entire time. Everybody's listening to everything he says, because he is such a good storyteller, and so intelligent. And then he says, at the end of his speech, he says, and if you see that mountain over there start to erupt, put your head between your legs. He says, and kiss your ass goodbye. Well, honest to goodness, the math's pretty straight laced, and I just about died. That might have been the funniest thing I've ever heard in my life. Coming out of Dr. Glashan, I just about fell over. So those are a few of my Dr. Glashan stories. Ex-students, you're probably a little too young for this, but some of you may remember an A&W commercial way back in the 1990s where a kid was walking with the root bear. And the kid was talking away and the root bear doesn't speak, he was just listening. And the kid says, there are studies have shown that you're going to meet 10,000 people in your life. And they're going to come into your life for different reasons, etc. And I think for the teachers in this room, I'm sure I'm already at 10,000. So we meet a lot of people in our life, absolutely. But think about that, 10,000 people you're going to meet in your life. I often think about that, and I think it's pretty wild that those of us have had the experience. It has to be a statistical anomaly that perhaps the most intelligent person we've met in our life was also the kindest. And that was Dr. Pat Glashan. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. Next up, we have Doug Mansfield.
Hi, my name is Douglas Mansfield. I teach at Clearwater Academy. I've taught with Dr. Glashan for some time. And when I first heard that he'd fallen sick, Emily Price was given the task. Emily Price is the Formation for Girls instructor at the school. She was given the task to do a spiritual bouquet, which is something we do at Clearwater on a regular, where we sign a card, and in the card we'll do intentions and prayers and offer mass and things like that for someone. And so she came to me, not having the privilege of having met Dr. Glashan, and asked me to sign this card. And so I took the pen from her and then launched into a speech immediately about how amazing he was and the influence that he had on me and what an incredible person he was. After about 30 minutes, I noticed that she was looking at me because I hadn't given her pen back or signed the card. She was kind of making this face. She said, who was this guy? And I said, what do you mean? She said, I've been trying to get this card signed all day. And every single person grabs the pen and launches into a monologue about how amazing and inspiring he was. So she was just like, this has been my entire day at work. And so that made me think, what story out of the sort of small Rolodex of stories that I'd like to tell about Dr. Glashan that I would pick. Originally, inspired by Paul, I was going to tell a story about climbing out of the 3rd floor window at the Legionary Seminary in Rome in order to smoke cigars behind the seminary. But I see some legionaries here, so I'm not going to. Sorry, Paul. I'm going to religious route sound. Instead, I'll talk about an influence that he had when I first met Dr. Glashan. It was my first year at Clearwater, 14 years ago. The story goes that I missed a class, and what had happened was I came to the school and I opened up the computer, and the headline, the national headline was that a person that I knew very well was involved in clerical sexual abuse. And this person was, he baptized me as an infant when he was a priest. I confessed to him for the first time at my first confession, and then later confirmed me as a bishop. In fact, all of my sacraments up to that point were done by this man. And opening up the news and seeing his face as the headline was sort of a last straw for me. And it caused a spiritual crisis in my life, like a deep anger. And because I just sat there staring at the screen, kind of dumbfounded, that this person who was a regular at our dinner table growing up and was a spiritual mentor for me, that was the last straw. I was done. That was it. I was finished. I was angry. I was disgusted, and I was done with this whole Catholic thing. And then Dr. Glashan came and found me sitting in front of the computer crying because I didn't make it to class, and so many colleagues and teachers in here. And then took the time for the next couple of years to walk me through that. And to walk me through, to really understand that God's grace can't be poisoned by the sinfulness of a man. To really walk me through the idea that if every single person that's angry and disgusted at news stories like that were to leave the church, what kind of church would that leave us? And I later reflected on this, because if I truly believe what I publicly profess to believe, that what I do and what I believe in this life actually has eternal consequences, then what he did for me is no greater service or no greater favor that anyone could ever offer. What he's done for me is literally the greatest gift that he could give. If I truly believe that the font of grace is to be found at the church, in the church, then he has saved me. Well, God has saved me, but he has been presented as an instrument through him that has saved me, and not just one life. I mean, Father Michael was mentioning Father Cristino. I mean, just take a quick glance at his ministry and see the effect that he's having on young people, and then the effect that those young people are having on young people. The ripple effect that was caused by such an authentic witness is, the tally is still being done. And I remember attending a PD with Dr. Glashan where the speaker gave a metaphor that really stuck with me. And he said a lot of people picture their road to heaven as being like sort of riding a stretch limo, you know, this really luxury kind of ride, sipping on a glass of wine, I guess grape juice for Protestants. Whatever Protestants drink, I don't know. But a kind of attitude as like, I made it, I did it, I finally got to the ultimate goal. And the speaker said, well, we should change that thinking. If really our ride to heaven, you should picture it as being a crowded bus. And you should picture yourself as the driver. And I think once the final tally is done, if you are looking at the amount of souls touched by Dr. Glashan, the amount of people that have been reoriented back towards the true and the good and the beautiful, I'm not sure that a bus would do it. And the effect remains and continues to be seen. So I just want to say thank you to Dr. Glashan for actually giving me a model as to be able to see that in practice, to actually see what it looks like for that bus, for that model of faith, and for that authentic witness that he offered to everyone that he ever met, as far as I can tell. I just want to say thank you. Thank you.
Now we have two of our alumni, and one is, we have a newly formed alumni committee, which I say is because of Pat, honestly, and he's interceding for us too. So we have Mark Dumbriek and Emma Forrester, who will be coming up to give a tribute. So Mark is our vice chair and Emma is our chair, and I will invite Mark up first.
Good afternoon. My name is Mark Dumbriek, and I'm from the class of 2012. Our class had the privilege of having Dr. Glashan as our Religion 9, Social 20, and Social 30 teacher, and even our soccer coach one year. In the spirit of Social 30, I'll ask then, to what extent was it a privilege having Dr. Glashan as our teacher? I hope I can offer some commentary here over the next few minutes. I'll begin with an unusual observation from our Social 20 class. When you're a 16-year-old boy, Dr. Glashan's mustache was particularly legendary. Maybe even mythical. We spent plenty of time studying the Second World War in Social 20. When reading my textbook, I would occasionally find myself looking at photos of some of the most atrocious and mustached men in history, then find myself looking up at Dr. Glashan. Then I would ask myself, how could someone with such a legendary mustache be so legendary? It felt like his mustache was almost redemptive, that after reading about the atrocities committed by some of these mustached men in my textbook, I could look up and truly see in Dr. Glashan a good, virtuous, and heroic man. I was given a few words to speak today, and mercifully so for all of you, otherwise many words would be spoken. In reflecting upon Dr. Glashan's impact on me, a clear sense emerged quickly. Dr. Glashan was a man after our Lord's heart. What do I mean by this? In the 12 years I was blessed to know Dr. Glashan, I at first admittedly struggled to think of one earth-shattering moment. When I first encountered this struggle, I thought, how can that be? There must be something wrong with me. However, upon further reflection, I was almost overwhelmed remembering the many daily moments where Dr. Glashan gave of himself. Now, I kept everything from our Religion 9, Social 20, and Social 30 classes, and it was a real treat to browse through them while I was writing this. but it was the moments of his genuine goodness and humanity which will remain with me more than anything else. Whether it was unfailingly stopping me in the hallway to ask how my day was going, or what I had for dinner yesterday, or inviting me into his office over the lunch hour to talk about, well, whatever nugget of his encyclopedic knowledge he wished to pass on that day. These are the moments I truly treasure.
But where's the time? He doesn't have it on yet. Oh. He's waiting for it.
Dr. Glashan was a man after our Lord's heart. Consider this. Is this not how our Lord is as well? In our lives, do we not sometimes, maybe even often, expect him to show something to us in some earth-shattering way? While our Lord can and does do this from time to time, he more often acts like Dr. Glashan did every day in many daily moments. A closing thought. Perhaps Dr. Glashan's most impactful introduction to me was to the writing of Father Raymond D'Souza. Father Raymond and the Newman House Catholic chaplaincy was a large reason I decided to study at Queen's. If there was a Father Raymond D'Souza fan club, you can bet Dr. Glashan would probably be the president. In all seriousness, I called Father Raymond shortly after learning of Dr. Glashan's death. And if I may, he offered an insight which particularly stood out to me. He said, "As grateful as I am for Dr. Glashan having directed you to Newman House, you ought to be even more grateful to him for the fruit that Newman House has borne in your life." Rephrasing this for today, might I say, as grateful as I am for Dr. Glashan having brought us here, we ought to be even more grateful to him for the fruit this has borne in our lives. Now, Newman House's patron, St. John Henry Newman, had as his motto, "Heart speaks to heart." Dr. Glashan has surely made us better teachers and students, yes, but perhaps his greatest gift to us is making us more into men and women after our Lord's heart. And for this, I and we should be deeply grateful. As much as we will enjoy the wine and cheese in his honor tonight, we trust that whatever wine and cheese he is surely enjoying is literally an eternity better. Thank you, Dr. Glashan.
Thank you, Emma. I'll call you up.
So hello everyone, my name is Emma Forrester and I'm a graduate from the 2018 class. And first off, I just can't express how happy I am that we're finally able to gather today as a group to both celebrate and remember Dr. Glashan. And I'm honored to be allowed to speak here today and share some memories of just the impact that he had on me and the entire school. So to first start off, I think I have to go back to elementary school. And this is back when elementary was in Besbro, and as aforementioned, Dr. Glashan's office was on the basement floor of Besbro Hall. If you want to picture it, it was right by where the old library and the old computer lab were. And at this point, I'm in 5th grade. And at this point in time, our shoe rack was right by Dr. Glashan's office. And I have a distinct memory on some fall afternoon of walking down and seeing a crowd around our shoe rack, with Dr. Glashan in the center of it. And Dr. Glashan was handing out small slips of paper. And on these pieces of paper was a riddle. And the competition was that whoever was first able to solve this riddle would get a bounty of blue whales. And of course, I was very excited. So I remember that some of my friends and I grabbed a piece of paper, immediately ran out to the parade square and sat in a circle for our entire lunch hour attempting to solve this riddle. Now, we were very confident on our abilities to solve this. We did not, in fact, solve it correctly. However, I do believe we received a participation blue whale in the process. And I actually remember that riddle to this day, and I'd never thought until writing this to actually Google what that riddle was. This riddle is commonly known as Einstein's riddle, which Einstein had claimed that 98% of the population could not solve. So this is a testament to just how high of an academic standard Dr. Glashan held us all to, anyway, or that he grossly overestimated our abilities as fifth graders. Maybe a little bit of both. But I do challenge everyone after this to Google Einstein's riddle and see if you are truly smarter than a fifth grader. But all through elementary, I remember this being a weekly event where Dr. Glashan would hand out a slip of paper, whether that was a riddle or a puzzle or a word search, with the prospect of getting a blue whale as a reward. And why this is important is it just shows that Dr. Glashan had this gift of giving students the ability to get excited and involved with just a simple riddle or with each other. And no matter where he went, Dr. Glashan was able to spread joy. And that might be through blue whales, that might be through a fun riddle, or even in the classroom. Now skip ahead a few years, and I had the honor of being taught by Dr. Glashan for grade 8 social studies. And the same joy and excitement that you felt when you received a riddle from Dr. Glashan was only paralleled in this classroom. I don't think I was ever more excited to get to a class than when it was with Dr. Glashan. Apologies, all the teachers I see in the front row. But the best way that I can describe a classroom experience with Dr. Glashan is it's like you're stepping into a movie. And again, his storytelling abilities are beyond compare. So it would be like you would step into the classroom, he would start talking about Renaissance Italy, and that 50-minute class would fly by in a matter of seconds. But you could picture the event that was going on, and you didn't want to sit there and take notes, you just wanted to sit back and listen. And I remember that to this day. But possibly my favorite memory of Dr. Glashan from grade 8 social was something known as the student of the fortnight, which was every 2 weeks, Dr. Glashan would pick a student, whether they had done something excellent in their academia, needed some recognition, and they would get a small prize. Now today I brought with me this bird, and what it does is it rests on a pyramid and it spins. This was the prize I received for being the student of the fortnight. And I don't think 10 years ago I would have thought about how much significance this bird would hold for me today. But today it sits on my desk still. And there's moments where, I'm sitting and studying for final exams, and I'm just sitting there thinking, why oh why did I decide I wanted to do this? And I'll see this bird, and I'll be able to give it a spin, and it reminds me of the joy for learning that Dr. Glashan instilled in me as a student. It reminds me of how much I value the opportunity for an education, how much I love just being curious and asking questions. And it's that I'm forever grateful for from Dr. Glashan. And when I'm struggling over a final assignment, I can look to this bird and I can remember just that curiosity that he gave to every single student that he ever had. Now in our grade 8 social class, Dr. Glashan gave us a lesson on St. Catherine of Siena, which just by chance happened to be the saint that I chose for my Saints Fair that year. And St. Catherine has a quote that I think embodies the impact that Dr. Glashan has had, not on me, but the entire school. And it goes, "Out of the darkness is born the light." Dr. Glashan is and will continue to be missed. But in this darkness, I urge each and every one of you to recall all the wonderful memories that we have of him. And in gathering here today, we bring light from this darkness in sharing the positive and lasting impact that Dr. Glashan has had on each and every one of us. Dr. Glashan will forever be part of the Clearwater Academy community and will impact us to this day. I like to think that every time a loved one heads up to heaven, a little bit of heaven comes down to us. And I think in spirit today, we can feel him with us. And every time that you see a fun time, and every time that you read a little riddle, or eat a blue whale, I think that you'll feel that little piece of heaven there with us. So thank you, Dr. Glashan, for the impact that you've had not just on me, but on every single member of Clearwater Academy. Nothing that we can say today can express just the appreciation that we have for him. Thank you.
Okay, so that was the toughest thing that we could do, is to get that many perspectives in a short time. It's a lot longer than I had planned, but everybody, thank you so much for sharing those memories. And I know that, Paul. Good, I laughed at it.
Really quick.
think I was on the draft program, but then I got cut.
You aged out?
Pardon me?
You aged out?
Yes. I feel a bit intimidated after listening to those two alumni students. Very well spoken. Must have come from a pretty good school. I had the blessing, the privilege, the honor of hiring Dr. Glashan not once but twice. I met him early in the early 2000s. He was at Clearwater for a few years, and then he was whisked away by Dixon's State or someplace like that. And then Bill and I pursued him. Year after year, we pursued him. I phoned Dixon's State, and I phoned Glashan's many times down in South Dakota. And eventually he came back. Listening to some of the stories about the trips to Chicago and the suits and ties and things like that, I thought of a couple of good ones that we had. Dr. Glashan and I, at one of our trips to Chicago, we were at a ball game. And he came back to our seats with 2 beer, and he said, "They just asked me for my ID." And I said, "Patrick," I said, "she's a new girl. She has to ask everybody for their ID." And, oh, there was another really good one, I forgot it now. But the suits, the suit, the tie, the shirts, the shoes, and I'm thinking, hold it a second. My 2 boys, probably my 3 boys, have one of their first impressions of Pat Glashan was not the suit and the tie. When they were, I can't remember if it was the first time you guys were in Calgary or the second time, they were living close to St. James Parish. And they went to 10 o'clock Mass on Sunday morning, and we went to 11:15. So we're driving down 20th Street towards church for the 11:15 Mass. And as we're going past the Glashan's apartment, they're walking out going for a drive on Sunday. Pat Glashan in his khakis and comfortable shoes and a golf shirt and a mug of coffee. I think it was coffee. In one hand. He was driving. But in the other, no, either in his hand or in his mouth was a cigar the size of a baseball bat. Now this is 11 o'clock on Sunday morning. And my 3 sons, Colin, Christopher, and Michael, sitting in the back of the van, saw that, and Dr. Glashan's stock went from here on a Sunday morning at 11 o'clock. He also likes Scotch. So, for those of you that are interested in cigars and Scotch, I have them both.
So sorry, Paul, to forget that you have a course. Anyways, it's been one of those weeks getting organized for this, and so many pieces to come together. Yes, thank you. Thank you all. I encourage you, I know that these must have triggered a lot of your own memories, so I encourage you to stay behind afterwards and enjoy some time together. There's so many people that are not here today that send their condolences to you and your family, Patricia. I have to mention a couple, Rosemary Walter, Tara Bachler, the Mayer family, a couple of our alumni committee, Jen Aiken and Mike Kate. Mike Kate had a real soft spot for him, and so they would have loved to have been here. And Nick Borelli. So Nick really, really wishes he was here today. So I'm just going to finish this off with his comments. I'm sorry to say that I won't be able to attend Patrick's Memorial Day, but I will be there in spirit. Patrick and I shared many hours of pleasant, professional, and more mundane conversations. We had a lot in common interests and similar views. We even shared notes on winemaking and gardening in the prairies. I had immense respect for such an intelligent, cultured gentleman who inspired trust and respect in everyone. I treasured his friendship and never hesitated to consult him for whatever issue I was dealing with, be it personal or professional in nature. In closing, I'm confident his legacy of search of knowledge, fairness, generosity, and love for all will endure in Clearwater Academy. So just before we go to the next stage of, I'm going to ask Bill Tomiak to come up.
Patricia, it's so good to have you here with us. Thank you everyone for joining us today. I want a huge thanks to Liz and everyone that organized the event today. Thank you so much, Liz, for all your work with that. To the speakers that came up and brought back so many memories for all of us. I'm sitting here, even as Paul was going, the first time I got into Pat's car, he was driving me somewhere. I had never smelled so much smoke in my life, and I didn't know Pat smoked cigars. So. But thank you for your testimonies and your words today on Patrick. And Father Michael, thank you for doing Mass for us today, a beautiful Mass that you celebrated for us. So we have something very special, Patricia, that we want to give to you, and will be hung in the hall of Athlone Hall here on behalf of Pat. So we're dedicating this auditorium to Pat Glashan. Athlone Hall Auditorium dedicated to the memory of Dr. Patrick Glashan in appreciation of his many years and steadfast and faith-filled leadership to Clearwater Academy. And today we've been blessed to have so many memories brought back to us, but as Doug was saying, it's kind of like when people come into this room, like Emily Price, who didn't even know Dr. Glashan, and they see this here, and they'll ask somebody here, so who is Dr. Glashan? And that memory will live on, and he will live on for all of us. So thank you so much, Patricia, in honor of you.
Thank you very much, all of you, for coming. I especially appreciated the little children. Patrick and I had a great fondness for the children. And one of the things we did was when we went to St. Martha's Parish. By the way, as the worst housekeeper in the world, wouldn't you know I'd end up in St. Martha's Parish? At any rate, we started a giveaway. Now, none of you received this here, and I'm sorry, but it was only after Patrick had time on his hands and a computer that he discovered glow-in-the-dark rosary beads. So, you children probably got lots of rosary beads from my husband, but they were glow-in-the-dark. Now, I gave Liz some glow-in-the-dark packages that we give out at the parish. St. Michael's medal, prayer cards, glow-in-the-dark rosary beads, how to pray the rosary. Because those were the things that were important to Patrick and to me. So, if they haven't already been passed out, I hope that they will, because these are the final gift from Patrick. And I'm sure the kids would love to get the glow-in-the-dark. So I want to thank you all for coming. I have a couple of words for all of you fine-looking graduates. I met Patrick after a long-planned petitioning to St. Joseph. We used to live in Montreal, and I lived at the bottom of the street where St. Joseph's Oratory was. And every Sunday afternoon, I would go up to St. Joseph's Oratory, and I would light candles. Depends on how much money I had, would determine how many candles I had. And pray to St. Joseph to find me the best husband in the world. And St. Joseph came through. So Patrick he was a wonderful husband. Though I have to say to you, when he retired and he came home and he was there all the time, I found out that he really didn't like my cooking. And he took over all of the kitchen chores. And I'm happy that he washed the dishes. When my hands were sore from arthritis, I wished he wouldn't wash the dishes because I wanted to get them into the hot soapy water. But he was really great. He took care of all of that, you know. He was a wonderful father. He'd come home sometimes when we lived in Medicine Hat and pick the kids up and take them out to play in the playgrounds after supper and give me a little bit of peace. So that was wonderful. And he just was the perfect man. The perfect man for me, chosen by St. Joseph for me. I also wanted to talk about the little kids. The kindergarten kids loved Patrick. I'd often go down into the schoolyard and I'd see them wrapped around his legs. 3 possibilities. 1, they knew he loved them, and he really did love these kids. 2, he had blue whales. Or 3, he was teaching them how to make funny faces. And so if your parents here and your kids came home with really strange, funny faces, you know where they came from. He really did love making funny faces with the kids. So I want to once again thank you very much. I really appreciate all of the comments and, you know, I guess maybe I knew he was loved, but I didn't really realize just how much he was loved. And that's important for me, for the kids. My son David, my daughter Elizabeth, they're ever present, keeping me on the straight and narrow. And thank you very much once again.
Thank you, Patricia and Elizabeth and David, for sharing your beautiful husband and father with all of us, all of the Clearwater family. Okay, now we can have some wine and cheese. We're going to have just a really quick turnaround in here. We've got tables and everything all set up and some food for everybody. I have Rosanna and Bill who are going to do some tours of St. Thomas Hall More Hall, if you're interested. You're also welcome to come around, go around in Athlone Hall. We haven't changed a lot here, but we have all this area that's ours now. It's not New Heights, so we have a little bit of a committee who are going to do this within 5-10 minutes. So, okay, thank you.